Okay, well, I think we can get started. Welcome, and thanks everybody for being here. I would like to, on behalf of my parent and family relations team, welcome you. And our group is really committed to helping parents and families like you to support your student from now all the way through commencement. In addition to these types of like orientation and like the dry kind of informational events and stuff, we do lots of fun things as well too, so stay tuned for your parent and family update newsletter for the fun stuff that will happen once the semester gets started. In addition to what we have here, we will continue to support you by phone and email. We have a bilingual staff, so English and Spanish, so we'll share our contact information a bit at the end. Let's see, so we are not really truly the campus experts, so we get a lot of questions about things varying from like housing to parking to, you know, what they're serving at the gastronome on campus. So while we're not the experts, we know the experts and we can help you get in touch with the person or department that can answer your question and provide you with the resource that you need. This is our very first Q&A session in the COVID era. And we are thrilled to have Vincent Vigil talk about all the different student services that we are going to provide. This is our first one. We've got another virtual Q&A next week. It'll be next Friday at 2 p.m. We'll send a link so that you can participate in that as well. And that's really all about financial aid and student business services. And so tuition, scholarship support, financial aid, how to make payments, and so on and so forth. So we will be answering those questions next week, and we will provide a link via email and also on Facebook. So the format for today, we are going to start out with the questions that, the kind of most popular questions that came up from your registration, the ones that you provided at registration. And then if we've got some at the end, we will take some live questions using the Q&A feature. So if you can kind of hold off on that for just a bit, because we want to make sure that you might already get your question answered. And we'll let you know when it's time to submit questions. And then at the very end, we're going to provide lists of resources and contacts if you need additional support, both for student affairs and for parent and family relations. So we'll get started. Vincent Vigil, who is, besides a lovely and charming person, he is the Dean of Students and the Associate Vice President of Wellness and Care for Student Affairs. Very busy guy. He oversees health services, including counseling and mental health support, disability support services, housing and residential engagement, AKA dorms, student life and leadership, which is the many activities that we have on campus, as well as the student emergency support services. So he's got a lot of information. So anyway, I will turn it over to you to say hi, and then we'll get started with our first question. Is there anything that you would like to tell us before we get started?
No, thank you for having me today. Good afternoon, everyone. So you talked a little bit about my bio. I will say one of the other privileges that I have here at Cal State Fullerton is that I'm chairing the reentry group. So I'm co-chairing that group with Mark Filowitz, who's an associate vice president within the provost office. So him and I are re-chairing kind of how are we thinking about coming back to campus and implementing those strategies. So I hope that I can help answer those questions also.
That's good. And I wanted to also, because not everybody's academic speak, I always forget that not everybody knows what a provost is. That is the academic affairs side of the house. And so they're overseeing that. All right. So starting with the return to campus questions. Do you have an idea of when we might be coming back to campus this year? And do you have any details about the plan to return?
Yeah, so I would encourage you all to visit our coronavirus website. If you go to the fullerton.edu website, on the very top, it says Titans Return. And on that website, it has all of these great FAQs for students, for parents. It also has information about the phases in terms of reentry for our campus. So currently our campus is in phase 2, which we're calling that phase return of additional personnel. We will go into phase 3, which will be fall 2020 semester. So in terms of who's coming back for fall, we've identified 239 classes that we deem as essential. So those classes need to happen in person. So we're talking about labs, we're talking about nursing programs that need that high touch. We're talking about some of our kinesiology classes. So those classes can't happen virtually, they need to happen in person. So 239 have been identified. That will be about 4,000 students on our campus in fall. That is less than what we typically have in the summer. Typically in the summer, we have about 600 classes. So in terms of density, our campus will be less than what we are in the summer. We are taking precautions in terms of what we can and cannot do on the campus in terms of CDC guidelines, the Chancellor's Office guidelines, and then also our own guidelines. So for example, after every class, the class will be sterilized, right? It will be cleaned. Every class will have computer technology in the class just in case someone is ill or someone needs to go virtual. So we'll be able to do that. So in terms of who's coming back, we have students with those in-person classes that are coming back. And we also have faculty that are teaching those in-person classes that are coming back. And a few of the offices, majority of us are still staying behind. So we're still doing virtual. For example, student affairs, all the co-curricular, we are still going to do that virtually.
Awesome, thank you, sir. Is there a possibility of students starting with online classes and transitioning like to in-person classes in the middle of the fall semester?
No. So right now our plan is that we will be, whatever has been identified for online will be online, and whatever has been identified for in-person will be in person. However, our plans can always change, right? So as you know, we answer to the Chancellor's Office. So we're a part of a CSU system within the Chancellor's Office. The Chancellor's Office reports to the Governor's Office, right? So we're all state employees here. So our governor can say at any moment, hey, you know, you all are going to be virtual now. Or, hey, our cases have increased so much in Orange County that you all need to go virtual. So we have to abide by, you know, state and local guidelines. So I don't see us going from online to in-person within the fall semester because we've already done that plan. I can see us possibly in the middle of the school year, maybe saying, okay, we have 239 classes that are in person. Now we're all going to have to be virtual and making that switch. So I don't see us doing it the other way around.
Thanks for that. Okay, so I'm going to transition to fees now. Do you think there will be a reimbursement for student services that aren't used?
Yeah, so this question has come up a lot, Brooke. So the Dean of Students Office, we've gotten quite a few emails from students. There's also a change.org petition from our students that are asking about tuition and fees. We're not the only CSU campus that is having these conversations with their students. I've met with about 15 students individually from our Associated Students Incorporated, our student government, within the last couple of weeks about tuition and fees. So the tuition and fees are covered. They're there to cover fixed cost, right, and ongoing expenses that the university is incurring. So we are still having instruction as we would when we're in person. We're still having all of the student support services as we would if we were in person. So that administrative overhead costs for faculty, staff, and student wages, the benefits, the utilities, repair, maintenance, any sort of facility upgrades, programs and services, we're still doing those things. So there wouldn't be any sort of reduction to tuition or fees at this moment. Tuition is guided by the Chancellor's Office. So if there were to be any sort of deduction in terms of tuition, the Chancellor's Office would be the one to go ahead and institute that. In terms of the fees, each campus has their own fees and each campus pays different types of fees for different things. And so our campus, we're still using that money for programs and services. So there wouldn't be a reduction for those particular fees as of yet, but that could change.
All right, that's helpful. I think that probably answered a host of things. We had a question, what specifically is a student success fee?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, we have a number of different fees on our campus. I would advise the parents to visit two websites. The first one is the Student Business Services website. So just go ahead and Google Student Business Services, and you'll find in there, there'll be tuition and fees. Click on that link and you'll see a list of all the fees that the students pay and how much they are and what it goes towards. The other website that I would recommend is SFAC, SFAC. So just Google CSUF, SFAC, SFAC, and then you'll see on there that that's the Student Finance Advisory Council. And so that group, anyone who has a fee, they have to present. So say, for example, there's a health fee. So the director of the health center needs to present to this committee to let them know, how are we using this money? And so you'll see on that website the different presentations made for each of the fees. So that's where you can get information. Did I answer that question? Yeah.
No.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so moving on to campus services. Actually, before I start, if you have a question, if you would mind putting it, everybody, into the Q&A versus chat, that helps us like keep track of which questions have been asked and answered and that kind of thing. That'd be super helpful. Okay, so on campus services, can you tell us what will be open in the fall? Some questions were about the library, the Titan Student Union, and then the Student Recreation Center, aka the gym.
Yeah. So when we were talking about re-entry for our campus, right, one of the things that we were talking about, if we're going to have in-person classes, then the students that are taking those in-person classes may need somewhere to study, right? Sure, they could study outside, but they might need somewhere inside, especially our students with disabilities, right? They might need a table or a desk that, you know, can go high or low. So we have sectioned off a portion of the first floor of the library that will hold up to 150 students, and that will be the maximum capacity for that space. So the design of that space, everything is sectioned off. So there is, you know, 6 feet distance. The tables are all separated. There will be no computers in there, so we don't have to disinfect computers. It'll just be tables and chairs for students to study. And then after a student leaves, that space will be disinfected. Again, the maximum capacity to make sure that we are respecting social distancing will be, you know, 150 people within that particular space. So that will be monitored by a staff member. Also, any person that is on our campus, they have to wear a face covering. So that is with, you know, our local guidelines for our city. Also with the Chancellor's Office, we've said that we are a public facing, you know, we're a public facing institution. So since we're public facing, we need to wear our mask. So we have cute little Tuffy designs all around campus on the digital screens that have Tuffy with the mask on. So students do need to wear a facial covering. If, for example, they come to campus and they're, oh, I forgot my facial covering in my car and I'm already left, then they could go to EH&S, our Environmental Health and Safety Office, to get a mask. There will also be different kind of like pop-ups around campus. There'll probably be a couple of those where students could get PPE materials if they happen to forget. Also, some students with disabilities can't wear a mask. We're encouraging them to wear face coverings. And so if a student needs a face covering, they can also go to Environmental Health and Safety.
Is that more like a face shield where it doesn't cover your mouth, but it kind of, is that what you mean? Okay.
Yeah, it's a face shield where it's clear and you know, you just wear it and so it prohibits any sort of saliva or spit or anything coughing to leave that shield area.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Okie doke. In terms of health services, will the center be open, and what type of services are available both in person and online?
Yeah, so our health center has not closed down. Okay, so throughout the entire COVID, we've always been open. So when COVID first happened around March, I believe, when everyone left campus, we still had health professionals on our campus. We had a modified schedule for them. They were there from like 9 to 1. So it was a little less in terms of the hours, but we still had people there. And the reason why is because our health center, there's a health fee that our students pay. So if our students are paying for a health fee, then the health professional should be there. So our health professionals never left campus. So moving into the fall semester, we will be open from 9 to 5. Students could come in for walk-ins. They need to make an appointment. Students could come in for the pharmacy. They can just walk in to the pharmacy. Students can come in to make the appointment or call to make the appointment. So we will be open in terms of our health center. We will not be doing COVID testing on campus. So if a student does believe that they are exposed to COVID or that they are COVID positive, we have a procedure within our health center in terms of self-isolation, and then also where we would direct that student to go for testing. If the person does show symptoms, we actually have someone from Orange County Health that will come to our campus to test a student while the student is self-isolated in our health center. So the health center is open. You also mentioned the Student Recreation Center. So as of now, the Student Recreation Center will be closed in the fall semester. We're assessing whether or not that will change, but that's similar to our ordinance within Orange County, right? All gyms are closed, so our Student Health Center is going to remain closed. Our student union, for example, will also remain closed, unfortunately. So we're looking to see if they can reopen sometime in the middle of fall. And that's because the density level within the student union is just so high. And Brooke and Grace could probably attest to this. When you pass by that student union during the school, it is packed. People are everywhere. People are sitting and laying down and taking naps. And so we need to assess whether or not we can safely have the student union open.
Sure, that makes sense. And yes, it is a hub of activity. Has been since I was there in the late 90s. I'm aging myself, but that's okay. Okay, how is it best for students to request an appointment for services?
Which type of services?
I don't know.
So
I think just general, I think there's like maybe mental health services being one and then just general health services for the other.
yeah, so any sort of services that we have for students, like I said, a majority of the student services will remain virtual. So students should go to the website and email. Email is going to be our best friend right now. Calling also, students can call particular offices, but email will probably be best to go ahead and schedule those appointments. If it is the health center or if they want to see someone at counseling and psychological services, they can call the health center and make that appointment. So our counseling services is still moving forward. So again, we have not stopped, just like the health center, with our counseling center. Our counseling center had to switch from in-person to virtual counseling within 5 days. You know, they did this miraculously in March. And we've always said, you know, it's not a good idea to do virtual counseling and versus in-person, but we made it happen because we needed to. Again, this is a fee that students pay. So students are paying a fee, we need to offer them a service. So we continue to have CAP services, which is our counseling and psychological services. So students can call and make an appointment for that. Oh, I think you're muted, Brooke. I can't hear you.
Ay, darn, I can never switch over fast enough. Okay, what other services that maybe we haven't touched on either might be available or that might be affected, like one of the more major services?
You know, another service that is not within student affairs, as Brooke talked about in the beginning, you know, there's student affairs and there's academic affairs of the house, right? In student affairs, we do not oversee our academic advisors. That's within academic affairs. So, you know, a lot of students are having questions about classes and class schedules. And some students even have questions about, you know, I have a virtual class, but, you know, I'd rather take an in-person class, or I have an in-person class and I'd rather take a virtual class. So those sort of switches and things, if they have questions, they can always talk to their academic advisor. So I would encourage students to go to the academic advising website and email them to schedule an appointment with the academic advisor. Academic advising, along with our career center, for example, are doing different drop-in hours where students can, you know, there's an open 2 hours where anyone could drop in and ask questions. So, you know, we're trying our best to be innovative in this virtual world. But I would definitely say academic, you know, academic advising is one that maybe your students might have questions about that they should definitely know.
How do folks go about contacting disability support services?
Yeah, so they can just go to the DSS website and email DSS. Students that were registered previously in their K through 12 or registered in their community colleges, usually that registration it's easier for us to move forward and transfer that registration to our campus if they newly discovered that they have a disability, and then we'll help them through that process. There are 2 orange buttons on the DSS website, and one of the orange buttons is for students about virtual engagement with DSS, and the other orange button is for faculty. So definitely students can go to the DSS website, and we are making those accommodations. So for example, out of the 239 classes that we are emailing those students that are registered with DSS already, that are registered for in-person classes, to see what sort of accommodations need to be made for them. So those are students that are definitely on our minds as we move forward.
So I've got a question about, are boxed, like to-go type meals available on campus? Do we know how to pick them up? What's the availability?
Yeah, so there will be 3 dining entities available on campus while we're in the fall semester for in-person. One will be Carl's Jr. So our Carl's Jr. on campus has a little window that I don't think we've ever used it before, but they're gonna start using it now, where students could just go to the window, get their food, and then leave. Starbucks in the library will be open, so they'll be doing social distancing within that space. And then also within our housing and residential engagement, we have a dining facility called the Gastronome. So that facility is usually buffet style, and a lot of students love to go there because you get your money's worth when you go eat there. But they will be having boxed lunches instead. So a student who has points for the Gastronome could go in there, swipe their card, get their boxed lunch or their boxed meal, and leave. Students that don't have points with the Gastronome, for example, can just pay and go ahead and get their boxed lunch or boxed meal. So there's 3 different options for students in terms of food on our campus.
Awesome, thanks. Before we switch to housing and residential life, I want to say if you missed any portion of this Q&A, we are going to record it and send it all to you later. So you get to relive this moment again and again if you'd like. Okay, so for housing, is on-campus housing available for the fall semester? Are there any updates for students on the wait list?
So as of now, we are moving forward with housing. Again, as I said, all of these plans can change tomorrow, right? So governor could have a news conference tomorrow and it could all change. So as of now, we've been approved to have housing on campus. We will be at about a 20% occupancy for housing. So that's about 200 students. The students will live in apartment style living. So we decided apartment style rather than the traditional residence halls, because apartment style, everyone could have their own room. They will share a bathroom, they will share a kitchen area and a dining room. But it's just easier for us to make certain that people have their own rooms for health and safety reasons. So that'll be about 200 students is what we're planning for right now. We actually have our resident advisors, about 24 of them are moving in this Sunday for their training, which will all be virtual. So they'll be sitting in their rooms getting trained. In terms of a waiting list, so students that want to go into housing, there already is a waiting list. So it's already been generated. So if your student is on the waiting list right now, they should hear from housing whether or not that they will get any sort of housing accommodations. But as I said, we're at a 20% occupancy. So that doesn't mean that they will be able to get housing. I will say that, you know, we are giving priority those on the waiting list for students that have in-person classes, right? So if they have an in-person class and they need to travel on campus, then we are looking at those in terms of a priority for our students.
All right. Will you automatically be put, like if you can't get in this fall and you're already on the list, will you automatically, like, will that application be like pushed towards the next semester? Is there a refund for fall deposits? How does that work?
So yeah, so if your student did not make it to get housing this year and they applied for this fall semester, I would have them go ahead and just email housing and residential engagement to see and to ask if they're on the waiting list, to make sure if they want to be on that waiting list, and to ask and see if they want to, if spring comes around and they want to be considered for spring. I would have them double check just to be on the safe side, right? In terms of deposits, so we're preparing for anything in housing and residential engagement, right? So we're preparing that if we have people living in housing, and then, you know, Governor Newsom says, okay, now you all got to leave, which they did in the spring, that we did provide students a refund in the spring semester because they didn't live in housing throughout the entire time. So we provided them the refund for the times that they didn't live in housing, right? So if we were to do that again, if we had to leave housing again, then we will make certain that students do receive the refund, as we did in the spring semester.
That's good information. I know
Mm-hmm.
lots of folks have that question. Okay, in terms of like dorm living,
Mm-hmm.
right? On campus living, what products and services are available for on campus living? So like, you know, are there RAs? We already talked about access to food
Mm-hmm.
and stuff on campus, but in terms of like cleaning products or cleaning services, you know, and the basics like toilet paper and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, this year we're being realistic with our students, and we're reminding them that, hey, you should probably bring some cleaning products, some disinfecting, bring your mask, right? Also, we're being upfront with our students and realistic and saying, hey, just bring what you need right now to campus, right? Like if the governor says, okay, you all got to leave, we're 100% virtual, then it's better to have just your necessities with you versus, oh, I brought, you know, everything, and now I got to move everything out, right? So we're really trying to encourage students just to bring what you need, you know, your laptop, your phone, your clothes, your comforter, you know, those sort of bare necessities right now, because we don't know how this semester may play out, right? So don't bring too much, you know, that big screen TV, maybe you really don't need that because you got your laptop, right? Just bring what you need this time around. But yes, RAs will be there. So resident advisors will be there, and they will be programming as they have done before. The programs won't look like we had done in the past, where we kind of sit around a lounge and chat. It's going to be virtual. We're thinking about some outdoor programming that can happen, maybe like a drive-in movie type of situation. So we're still brainstorming some ideas in terms of programming, but there still will be engagement in housing.
And then I know we touched on this a little bit, but dorms and residential living, your thoughts on them being available for the spring semester?
Yeah, we don't, you know, as of now, we don't know, right? So in terms of planning for spring, we're going to plan and move forward as if we are doing, you know, a hybrid or in person, unless we're told otherwise. So that's how we're going to plan. So as we begin to think about spring, that's what's on our minds. But we don't know yet, right? We're still waiting for some guidance from the chancellor's office and the governor.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like for athletes, is there any special housing?
Well, so many of you may have seen on social media, unfortunately, that the Big West did come out and say that there will be no fall sports. So that means that our athletes will not be competing this fall semester. Typically, our athletes that do compete in the fall do live in housing. So as of now, I don't know, because that news just happened yesterday. So I don't know if our athletes will still live in housing or if they won't. So I think that athletics is working that situation out. So if you have any questions about that, you should probably contact athletics.
Okay, so in terms of like off-campus housing, there's a group, University Housing LLC. I think that's University House across the street.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, there are some folks that had signed leases like pre-COVID with
Correct.
University Housing, and they weren't able to get out of their lease. Or do you have any
Correct.
information on that? I know it's off campus, but you know
Correct.
almost
Yeah.
everything.
So I will, you know, just stress that it is off campus. So this is a private company. This is a private entity. We do not have any affiliation with us. They don't hold any sort of MOU with us at all. There is nothing. They are their own entity. So we've gotten a couple of questions from students about this, about University House, and there is also a change.org petition about University House from our students. So it is true. So students that lived in this private housing, they signed leases, and when March came around, they wanted to leave and they wouldn't be able to get out of their lease. And so what my office did and what I did is I reached out to University House just to share with them the student perspective. You know, our students got to go back home. Our students cannot pay for the rest of it. You know, there's a moratorium with the city of Fullerton and with the state, so you can't evict any of our students. So I just wanted to clarify with them about what exactly they can and cannot do. At the end of the day, it is up to them. They are in charge of their leases. We have nothing to do with that particular entity, unfortunately. I can continue, and I still do. I text message one of their representatives probably every week just to let him know, okay, we got more students that are coming your way. I'm emailing them to you, and I'm just letting them know like what is going on. But ultimately, they are a corporation and they get to decide what their leases are. And I know that this isn't easy maybe for some of the employees that work there and things like that, because they feel for the students, they work with our students, and so ultimately it's up to the company. But we've tried our best to communicate and advocate for our students. We've also sent some resources to students. So one of them is our Associated Students Incorporated, our student government. There is a legal clinic that students can chat with, like a legal, I don't know if they're a lawyer or someone from law school, but there's a legal person that they can chat with. So we've been sending students that information, and also just the moratorium information.
Okay.
That's a hot topic.
Yeah, it is.
It's unfortunate.
Okay, and then last housing question for and just as a reminder, so we got questions submitted. We're going to answer those first. And then at the end, we'll do some new questions. If they haven't been answered, you can drop those in Q&A. Okay, so housing and residential life. Last one is, you talked about priority housing for folks that have classes on campus. How about out-of-town students?
Yeah. So out-of-town students that have classes on campus, or out-of-town students that have virtual classes? So I think the priority is out-of-town students that have, any students that have in-person classes is a priority, right? If you're out of town and all of your classes are virtual, then I don't know what the priority is, because you're virtual, right? So everything will be virtual. But if you have one class that's in person, then yes, anyone who has in-person classes would be considered a priority for us to make certain that they get some sort of housing.
Got it. Okay, on the academic advising front, for tutoring services, what is available online, and is there any other support for specifically upperclassmen to make sure that they graduate on time?
Yeah, so one of the great things that we have in each of the colleges is we have assistant deans, and within those assistant dean positions, they have student success centers. So those student success centers in each of the colleges provide tutoring resources, provide any sort of academic support resources that they need. So again, all of those services will be online. So I would encourage your student, if they have any sort of academic related questions, to reach out to their student success center, so student success center in their college, and it's usually affiliated with an assistant dean. Again, if they have any questions, they could just go to that assistant dean or that student success center. And my office, the dean of students office, our office is usually the one that if a student has any roadblocks, right? So if a student, and I was a first generation student, college students, so I know how it is to go from office to office and not get the answers that you want and still be confused. So we encourage students to come to the Dean of Students office. Well, now they can email us, email the Dean of Students office if they hit any roadblocks, like I don't know where to go, or I don't know what this is or what this means. Email us and we'll help to facilitate and connect you with resources.
Okie doke. Let's see. Will more dorms be available in the spring if on-campus classes are offered?
I mean, that's a what if, right? So if there are more on-campus classes, maybe. I can't say for certain, because a lot of this stuff with COVID is so fluid. And again, there's so many stakeholders that we need to consider, like local, state, and then our chancellor's office. So, I can't be certain to say.
Yep. The what if.
So what if? That's the world we've all been living in lately. What if, and we're trying to think of, what if this happens? Yeah.
I know. Where's my crystal ball? Are there any specific programs to support freshmen as they transition into college?
Yes. So your students, if they are transitioning, they will go through a virtual orientation. And I've seen some of these modules that they've done online, and they are phenomenal. So orientation is really bringing it up. They are stepping it up, which is great. So in that orientation, they will go over academic support services for the students, especially first-year students. Again, I would mention the student success services, the academic advisor. Every college also has a retention specialist. So again, affiliated with that student success center, if we see students that maybe aren't doing so well throughout the semester, we're going to reach out to them and say, hey, how can we help you through that retention specialist? So I would definitely say that orientation, when they go through that, they're going to get a good chunk of information.
Super. Career services and like, are there internships and work opportunities specifically? Somebody said specifically for lower classmen, but probably anybody.
Yeah, so there's going to be, just like we've had before, our career services, they have a search engine called Titan Connection. So again, I'll say that again, Titan Connection on the Career Center website. They list on that Career Center website under Titan Connection all paid and non-paid internships on and off campus. Again, things may look different because being on site for a job may not be on site anymore. It may be virtual, right? So it may look a little different than what we're used to. So currently they have about 1,500 part-time and full-time jobs on that Titan Connection. So I would definitely have your students look there if they're looking for internships, or also if your student has work study. You know, some of our students have work study and they want to work on campus, or they don't have work study and they still want to work on campus. Any on-campus jobs are also listed on that Titan Connection. So I would definitely look into that. The Career Center will still offer services for our transfer students. So they will have a different group of offerings for transfer students. One of them is called Design Your Life. There's also opportunities for students to have appointments with college career specialists and career coaches. They're going to have all of their services. They had a career fair online, so it's all going to be online. They're going to continue to do that. And then they're going to have drive-throughs. They call them drive-throughs, where it's just this open, 2 hours where students could just come on into the Zoom and ask any questions or meet with the counselor. So those will happen on Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 4 to 6:45. So again, all of this information is on the Career Center website.
Thank you much. Okay, so student clubs and organizations, what
Yes.
activities and clubs are available virtually, and what are the limitations around that?
Yeah, so one of the great things that we have, again, another online kind of database interactive platform is Titan Link. So students can go to fullerton.edu/TitanLink, and then on that platform list all of our student organizations. So our student organizations, they still need to be registered with our office within Student Life and Leadership, but they can't have any on-campus programs or meetings yet, right? So we're not at that point yet. So all of their stuff will need to be virtual. So students will learn about virtual meetings on there, virtual programs. And one of the great things that's happening in this virtual world with our student organizations is that they're getting opportunities to have more guest speakers come to their meetings than they have before, especially like high profile guest speakers, because these high profile people are just sitting at home like the rest of us. So they need something to do. So they're coming to all these student organization meetings just to pop in and chat with some students. So it's actually, it's actually interesting to see what the student orgs have done on a virtual platform. So again, it's fullerton.edu/TitanLink to learn about the student organizations. We also have involvement fair with Student Life and Leadership. It's called Discover Fest for our students. We're still going to do that. So we're going to do it virtually. And we're going to have all these student organizations create videos, and we're going to have fun videos on our YouTube. So, we're trying to do as much as we can what we did in person to continue to do it virtually.
So I know one of the questions is, do we know what clubs are active? So that will all be on Titan Link. So I'll
Correct.
get to the next one. Is there going to be like a recruitment for Greek organizations?
Yeah, so some of our Greek organizations may recruit, so we're still finalizing that with them. So, you know, on our campus, we have 4 different councils. We have our National Panhellenic Council, we have our Panhellenic Council, we have our fraternity, our IFC Interfraternity Council, and our Multicultural Greek Council. So those 4 councils, you know, altogether we have about, you know, 30 different fraternities and sororities within all of those 4 councils combined. So they are deciding whether or not recruitment will still go forward. I believe that Panhellenic, they decided that they will not do recruitment this fall, that they will wait until spring. But the other councils are still determining whether or not they will still have recruitment virtually. It's tough though, to be honest, it's tough. I mean, for those of you parents that are affiliated, you know how enlightening and how insightful it is to have that in-person recruitment, but now to try to create something online and virtual, that's a tough thing for our students to try to create.
Okay. Let's see. What type of, you talked a bit about Discover Fest, but are there any of the other type of virtual activities that you might want to highlight so that new students can feel a part of the community?
Yeah, orientation, for example, is putting together a welcome week of different activities that will happen. So it's really geared for incoming students to get them information about programs and services that are virtual. So that's coming up. Discoverfest is another thing. And then also on the Student Affairs website, if you look on our Student Affairs website, just Google Student Affairs CSUF, you'll see that there's a link that says virtual resources. So if you click on that link, it'll show you all of the virtual resources in terms of student affairs and what's being provided. So we're currently updating that list to make sure that it's reflective of the fall semester. But if you look now, you'll see an example of what we've provided in the summertime for our students. One of the great resources, again, another great resource that we've had on campus, and again, we're doing all these sort of portals and things like that, is with our CAPS office, so our counseling and psychological services. We've done a great job of promoting this resource for our students called U at Fullerton. So it's u.fullerton.edu. And anyone who has a fullerton.edu email address could log in, and they get resources about, you know, mental health. So, you know, how do I juggle studying at home, or, you know, I'm feeling depressed. And so they take these quizzes, and then when they take the quiz, it'll populate resources for them. So maybe the quiz is about anxiety. So I take the anxiety quiz, and oh, lo and behold, I do have some anxiety. So as a result of that, all these resources will pop up, and the resources are websites, videos, you know, just little links that people can learn. So there's a lot of stuff in that website. So that's another virtual resource that we've provided to students called U at Fullerton.
Okay, so now I'm going to get to some of the live questions, which Grace is putting together for me. Thanks so much. Let's see. Can you talk a little bit about how class meeting times will work? I know there's those big synchronous, asynchronous classes. Can you talk a bit about that?
Correct. So your students, once they've registered, when they log into the system online, the Titan Online, and they see a list of their classes, the class will say whether or not it's going to be synchronous, asynchronous, or a hybrid, right? So basically, it'll say online. If it's in person, it'll show the classroom that it's happening, and if it's a hybrid, that they're going to do some in person, some virtual, then it'll say hybrid. So it'll be listed next to the class after they register or when they register. And again, this class list, you know, right now I said we have 239. Again, like everything COVID related, things could change, right? They may have a class that says that we're doing it in person, and then they log in the next day and it's like, oh no, we're doing it virtual, because we're still finalizing some of the academic stuff on the academic side. So we're hoping to get that finalized by the beginning of August.
Okay, I have a couple housing questions. Is there a move-in date for the fall?
Yes.
Okay.
So it is August 17th.
Coming up quick. Great.
Mm-hmm.
And where was the other one? How do you get yourself on the wait list for housing?
Yeah, so if you applied for housing in the fall, and you didn't get it, you should have been asked whether or not that you want to be placed on the wait list. If you were not asked, then I would have you reach out to Housing and Residential Engagement.
Okay, we're kind of all over the place with questions, but how
That's
about
all right.
classes without meeting times? Like how do those work?
So a class without a meeting time, for example, will probably be, it probably says online next to it. So if it doesn't have like, if it doesn't say Monday, Wednesday from 3 to 4, for example, but it says online, that means that the class will just be online. So it'll be a recorded class that students could go on at any time and see. Some of the classes that are online will have a time. So for example, I'm teaching a class in the fall and we're meeting Wednesdays at 7 to 9. So it says Wednesday, 7 to 9, and it says online because they're still gonna have to meet me at 7 o'clock and go through the class. But some faculty members may not have that. It may just be online. So they're just gonna email you what the lesson has been recorded as, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Okay, I've got a little string of payment questions that you might be able to answer.
Hopefully.
Is there a last day to make a payment for this semester?
That is a good question. So I believe that the students today are going to get an email from financial aid that will outline payment information, and that will be sent to their fullerton.edu email, csu.fullerton.edu. If they don't get that email today, then I would have them reach out to the Student Business Services office and find out when that date would be. Most likely it's going to be on that website. So either financial aid, Student Business Services website, or your student will get an email sometime today.
Student Business Services, I believe, has the dates listed out and how the students are grouped. So I think Student Business Services is it. Okay. Another fine. Oh, well, I actually know the answer to this question about parking permits. Are they needed for this year? Do you want to weigh in, or if not, I can.
Of course they are. Is that what you're going to say, Brooke?
If you're on campus.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, if you're on campus and you have an on-campus class and you're coming, you know, you should probably get a permit or you're going to pay by the hour because we have our dispensaries. Brooke's shaking her head no. You know, whatever your student decides to do.
Yeah, I would recommend not doing the by hour. That gets really spendy unnecessarily, yes. And it takes a lot of time. The folks at parking are lovely. So I think it's fullerton.edu/parking. They've got all types of great information.
Correct. And also just to mention too, because we were talking about fees, you know, in March, parking, they reimbursed students because students were no longer coming. So again, that was a fee that students paid, and parking said, okay, you're not coming to campus anymore. Let's go ahead and reimburse you for that. So.
All right, another financial question. Do you know if there is, other than check by mail or the Student Business Services office, is there a way to pay tuition fees without the transaction fee?
I don't know that question. That's a good question.
Business Service.
So Student Business Services would know that. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Bouncing around again. Gastronome. Are there specific meal times? Do you know, or where could we find out?
As of now, we haven't hashed that out yet. So we will have that hashed out before the students arrive. So in the past, there have been meal times. So I'm assuming since we've done it in the past, we're going to do it again this year. So.
Okay. Let's see. If incoming freshmen take a gap year this year, can they attend next year without reapplying, or should they reapply?
I believe that they can, but I would have them confirm that with admissions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Student ID cards.
Yes.
Do you know how or if they will be issued?
Yes. So your student should have gotten an email that talks to them about how they get their Titan ID card. If not, just go to the Titan ID website, log into the portal, which is on the lower left-hand corner, and then they could fill out the forms in the process. So how we're doing it this year as a student, there's kind of ramifications in terms of the picture that they could submit. So they submit a picture, and then Titan ID will mail them their ID card. So it'll get mailed to their house so they don't have to come and pick it up.
Got
So
it.
they could, it's like, you know, you got to pick a professional picture and not like one with my buddies where we're like,
Yeah,
you know, doing
sure.
fancy stuff. Yeah.
So there's a couple questions about if you're living on close to campus, where do they go for groceries if they do not have a car? And I would suggest there's a Smart and Final within walking distance of apartments and housing.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a number of different grocery stores and things.
Yeah, absolutely. And then apartment housing, I mean, I know, like, will it be available to all students?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, so we've only gotten approved for a 20% occupancy in housing, and we're using our apartments for that because we're not going to do traditional residential halls, you know, with the apartment style. Everyone can have their own bedroom, so that'll be safer for our students. So we're using all of our apartments.
Okay, and I only have time for a couple more questions, and then we're going to, we will make sure that we provide you with some information with resources and how you can follow up. So if you didn't get your question answered, this isn't the end of the story. Okay, second to last question is, when is Welcome Week?
So Welcome Week will most likely be, and again, your students will get information about that most likely during orientation, but it's typically during the first week of school, typically.
Got it. And where was the one? Okay, so I know that we talked about some financial stuff, and then we're covering that next week. And July 31st is the deadline. Do we have any tips for folks that need their financial questions answered?
Yes. So your students, like I said earlier, will most likely get an email today from financial services regarding that deadline.
Got it.
Yeah.
And the last question I have is, how can parents best support Fullerton and students, especially our freshmen, from the home front?
So, you know, I think one thing that our students love, even though they may say, oh, mom and dad, or, you know, aunt, uncle, or whoever it is, I don't want you to bother me or leave me alone, I'm in college. But no, they love the check-ins. And I'm sure that all the students that I've worked with, they're on the phone with their parents more than they are with their friends, and they love it. So I would say continue to check in with your students. If they have any questions, you know, try to empower your student to do that, reach out, to go to those offices, or to reach out, like I said, to the Dean of Students office if they hit a roadblock and they don't know where to go. Because again, in college, we want to make certain that they are, you know, living up to their potential, but also that they're academically successful. So, you know, remind them that there are resources on campus. If they hit a roadblock, go to the Dean of Students office and empower them to do that. There's tons of resources. I will say also for parents or friends or, you know, anyone that you all know, we do have a fund that we started on campus called the Titan Emergency Fund. And if you have any friends or colleagues or companies that want to give towards that fund is really helping our students with basic needs. So students that are housing insecure, students that are food insecure, students that, you know, may not have, you know, some funds to fix that car to come to campus. So that Titan Emergency Fund is actually a godsend when it comes to helping our students. So I would definitely, if you know of anyone who wants to give, that's a good thing to help our students out with the Titan Emergency Fund.
And I would say on the parent and family front, because we in our office, we get to work with so many of you, is be involved, but be in the background. We provide ways for you to get information, because we're constantly, you know, pushing information to you. I know right now it's an overwhelming amount, and never quite exactly what you want or need at that moment, but we're working to get it out to you as much as possible. But we provide information throughout your students' time on campus. And so I think that is really important. If you got to make sure you're a member of the Titan Parent and Family Association, that is really important. There's events, like fun events and things that you can do with students and families where it's sort of like a non-invasive way. You're not like, I'm popping into your dorm room, or, you know, stuff like that. It provides, like, everybody's doing it. All the parents and families are participating. So that's really great. And also, yeah, the idea of like letting your kid fail a little, which is so hard. especially this year because everything's already so dang hard, but really letting them figure it out. And then they kind of stumble a little bit and you're like, you got this. You need to connect with that office, which is such a disconnect, I know, from K-12 education. Anyway, so that is really what I would suggest. Okay, so we, again, are going to send you this recording after everybody who's registered, we will send everybody a recording. We will include some links and things as well. I know Grace has some stuff that she's gonna pop on in terms of Dean of Students resources. And then we will follow up with our parent and family relations information as well. So
Definitely.
I'll let you run this one down.
Yeah, so in terms of resources, like I mentioned, if your student has been office to office and didn't get the answer, or they just don't know where to go, please go to the Dean of Students office, fullerton.edu/Dean of Students. They can email us their questions and we'll respond. Our email is there, our phone number is there. We are still checking our phones, so they can email us there. I mentioned to you earlier about virtual student services that are happening within the Division of Student Affairs. There's a link there, fullerton.edu/SA/virtual student services. And then also any COVID-19 and fall 2020 reentry updates are on the Coronavirus.fullerton.edu website. Again, like I mentioned earlier, all of these plans that I talked about with the classes, with the in-person, with the housing, they can change. It could change tomorrow. This is the thing about COVID-19, that things are changing based upon the trends that we're seeing within our local and state. So, if you get an email or you see on the thing that some of the stuff that I talked to you about is not accurate anymore, it might have already changed. So some of the stuff that I said, we're doing it like this, might change tomorrow, right? So just be aware of that. And we're always trying to remind our students of that this is fluid as we work against a virus, right?
Stupid COVID. Ruining all the things. Okay, so I guess last, I would really, Dean of Students is an excellent resource. And again, we in our parent and family relations team, we are not the experts in everything on campus. That's why we had Dr. Vigil here today, which is really lovely. We are going to have student business services and financial aid next week, and we're working to get, hopefully, if we can get academic affairs the following week. At any rate, you can reach us at titanparents@fullerton.edu and for email. We are online. We've got a Facebook. So all of our information really is in this last slide here. We would be happy to help you. We are one person down on our team, and so which is wonderful. We have a new teammate starting on Monday. Boy, she's going to jump in with both feet. And so a lot of times we're answering your emails at 10 and 11 o'clock at night or 7 a.m. So again, we're all working around the clock to make sure that you and your students have a smooth transition as possible. Anyway, and we're really thrilled that you're here, and we know this is hard, and we really want to be your partner from here until commencement. It's we're in it for the long haul. So Dr. Vigil, thank you so much. I so appreciate it. For those of you who haven't gotten your questions answered, please connect with us. Dean of Students office or ours. We will send you a recording as well. And thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
bye, y'all.
Thank you. Bye.